And we'll start right on the top line. Let me start. That's where we're up to, in fact. And now it's explaining for us to understand the principle of Tehilot Tato, of the lower Makif, what its effect on the world is. In principle, the effect on the world from a Makif is in the realm of bringing to the world it's a sense of its source, the spirit of its source. This is what a Makif contributes to the world. As we already discussed various angles, what's the difference between what the influence that the Makif presents and what the pnimi presents? The pnimi means something which can be identified with kochas pnimi, side touch, so forth. Like we always say, the cup on the table. It is known via its own presence. It's something that we can verify, so to speak, with our chushim, like touching and sight and hearing. Makif, on the other hand, is in a totally different realm. Makif is not touchable. Makif is not even discernible. It is not really an entity on the worldly scale, on the worldly level. An entity on the worldly level means we can distinguish between this entity and the other. In the Makif, you don't have this capability at all. Like you pointed out that the highest level of sight, which is the level of Chokhmah, when you look all the way out into the horizon, you may be seeing thousands of miles, but there is no distinction between one mile and another mile. You don't see the thousands of miles as a cumulative sight. You see them all as one reality, even though you're actually encompassing a whole spread, whole expanse. I want to give us even a more tangible illustration of this. If you look down a road, just down the road, you can see very far out. This is a road. This is not seeing the sky. This is a road. It's a real tangible presence. Yet you can look down the road and not have the sense that this that you're observing really is composed of many different pieces. Not only different pieces. This road was built piece by piece. When you build a road, it takes time to pave down the road and so forth. And yet there is this element that you're seeing it without identifying its components at all. The reason for that is because the road is part of the Makif. It is just there because the world is there. Although it is presented and built in a certain way, but you are not looking at it from that way. You're looking for it, but this represents to you the reality of the world, and this road tells you, I can walk and walk and walk indefinitely. Drive indefinitely. So Makif is known in a totally different manner than pnimi. In contrast to pnimi, where you are identifying the individual entities and you're grasping it, you can fully identify its limits, its contours, because this is what gives it a presence. One thing is distinguished from the other because of its contours, because it's a function. Whereas in the Makif, it's verified. It's real to you, not because of the functionality that you identify. It's real to you because it's real. It covers your world, and you can go in there. Thus, when we say that there is a Makif affecting the world, the Ak that affects all the worlds that are encompassed in this Machshava Akduma, the effect upon the world that comes from the Makif is in fact raising up the world to a different platform. Looking at the world not from a perspective that each thing needs to be substantiated and proven on its own and made by it on its own. It becomes part of the bigger picture. And this is so real and so effective to the extent that we can look down and you fly down and you see houses and buildings. You don't identify houses. It's there. This is the ground. Even though each house is clearly an entity unto itself and was built independently. But when you look down at it, you see it as part of the reality of the ground, because it is part of because in fact it's standing there it's maintained, it's held up by the Makif, by the reality of the ground itself. This is the power of the Makif. This is the part of Makif. So we're talking about this lower Makif. This Makif element, excuse me, does not conjure up the question, where does it come from? Why not? Because you immediately see this is not something that was built independently, individually. This is the Creator's presence. Only the Creator can create a Makif like this, a reality like this. Let us step into this a little bit deeper. When a human being builds a house, he builds 1,000 houses. Each house was built by its individual effort. It was not built because the person wanted that there should be a house there. Although when we look at the spread at the city, you say, oh, this is a developed area and so forth. It's a developed area, but each individual piece is built independently. So this is the Makif as it is contained and expressed in the pnimi. This is the effect of the Makif in the pnimi. That on the one hand, it is a pnimi, it is a precarious existence, it is built and has to stand by virtue of its structure and so forth. But it still has the effect of the Makif, that it is part of a greater reality. This is the effect of the Machshava Hagduma Deyak. It's a moshel. Machshava Hagduma Deyak. In this Machshava Hagduma is contained the entire existence of all the worlds. But the fact that it is rooted, so to speak, there's a Machshava that contains and embraces this entire, all of these worlds, brings into the worlds a higher perspective, a higher sense. So their existence is not merely that they were made what they are, but there is an essential presence. Here is the punchline. The difference between how the pnimi is built and how the Makif is built. The pnimi is built by concerted effort to build this particular thing. The Rebbe builds things. The Rebbe says, "Hu Omer AYIN." He says, "I want this." It's there. It represents the Rebbe's will, not the Rebbe's building capacity. We have a mashal for this too. Although we have to understand it's a mashal. Even in human life, we have a home. And a home presents, in the full measure, in the full sense, a human dwelling, human accommodation and comfort. So on the one hand, when you see the home, you say, oh, this is a human spirit. At the same time, you know that each particular aspect was made individually, was ordered and built and put in place separately. Yet still, because of that it merges so well with all other pieces, and it is clear that they were all put together here, not for each individual piece, but in order to represent the essential picture, the essential means, concept of a human dwelling. They get lost. The individuality gets lost in the human quality, in the spirit. And I said, you go into a house, and it's very well furnished. You don't say, oh, I saw chairs and tables. You didn't see chairs, you see a home. This home element, this is the Makif. This is the human spirit that created this home. And you see, and this is what you're looking at. This human spirit permeates every detail, every aspect, every individual entity in this home. It brings to every individual entity in this home a human, living quality. This is the Odom Kad Machshava. In this Machshava Akduma, there is a thought that is, as I said, the Rebbe doesn't create by building things, but by it represents what he stands, what he wants in his world. This Machshava Akduma is that thought that says, this is what I want in my world. Thereby, this spirit permeates everything in the world. When you look at these worlds, you don't see worlds, you see Machshava, the divine thought of what he wants. Therefore, this is what brings Ein Sof into the world. Notice, we spoke about it all the time. You look down the horizon and says, I look into infinity. The world is not infinite. And yet, this is the impression, this is how we relate to it. You know why we relate to it this way? Because this non-infinite infinity was created by divine design. And this is what we see. Rishon Malkim is a Shomayim, is a Oretz, and Oretz. This is everything that exists in our domain. I think that should be sufficient. Therefore, I'm starting at the end of the top line on page Kuf Nun Dalet. Just as the Machshava Hakduma is B'Yisardus, B'Oyin Sof. It is there because Oyin Sof is there, not because it is there. K'mo Ikein Be'emes Kol Ha'olomis. Likewise, Be'emes, in truth. What is the word Be'emes can draw up over here? What this Be'emes alludes to is, and it's meant to alert us, I think. Even though with our flesh eyes we will see, as I said, homes and so forth. But in truth, what is the spirit that maintains all of this? The reason that you fly over and see thousands of homes, it's not because each individual home was built, because this is a developed area, a human developed area, part of a big city, part of a state, part of a country. So, Be'emes, in truth, so we go down to its source, what it stands for. It's a completely different view. Notice, this is important and interesting observation. To buy a house in Manhattan or to buy a house in the outskirts of Brooklyn. Manhattan, you have to pay, you will never pay out, you never finish paying for it. Because it has a completely different value. This is Be'emes. Be'emes means in truth, not on the tangible and obvious part, but in truth if we reflect what this actually represents. Kol ha'olomis, all the worlds, the yoisom, because of the fact that they are betoich tzir koima de'ak. They are within the structure, the upstanding structure of ak. They're encompassed within that structure. That surrounds and embraces them. What does it mean it embraces them? It gives them its significance. All the Mishram that we just now presented represent this in so Harei Heim, thus they, the worlds, are therefore betailing our bottle. We shall now try to translate these words. Be'etzem mahusam, in the essence of their mahus. Mahus means what is there? What kind of reality is there? Umitziyusam, and then in their tangible presence. Le'oir in bottle. They're bottled be'etzem mahusam, umitziyusam le'er soiboro. Even though they're tangible entities, but their reality and even their tangible part is bottled in soiboro. Let's understand the principle of bitul. Bottled in soiboro means that they do not represent any kind of obstruction to any soul. In Amasholim, this can also be understood. If you have houses in a city, we fly down, you see thousands of houses. Each house was built independently, in its own individual. But as you see it as part of the city, it represents the city only. It doesn't represent itself at all. As a matter of fact, we all know that the city has what's called city planning. You can't just come and build a house. You build a house, the house has to fit the plans of the house, of the city. And therefore, both betzem mahusam mitziyusam le'en soiboro. Rak, except there's still a big difference between the bitul in the way it's an ak and the way it is in the world. Except it has to be recognized. Shabitul hazeh. Now this bitul that is present in the world, shemach masiyur kol mediyag, that is only due to the effect of the tziyur koin, excuse me, of the upstanding reality of ak. This is what encompasses it, and this is what effectuates the bitul in the world. Hu behelem oid is very much behelem, very much concealed in undertone. Sheina murgash b'nivroyim klal habitul hazeh. But in the nivroyim, this bitul is not sensed at all. We just finished talking about the design of a city and city planning and all that. So that this house that you're living in was built in this particular place, not by your choice, but by the city planner's choice. But once you live in the house, you don't know the difference. You don't know the difference at all. That sense that this house is part of the house, of the city, is totally oblivious in terms of, goes into oblivion as you're experiencing the house itself.
Goes into oblivion. Isn't the point that its imprint remains? Otherwise you'd be floating in space.
Its imprint remains, but you don't feel it. You don't sense it there. You don't sense the bitul from this house to the city. That's what the bitul. This bitul is true, is real. But the bitul is behelem oid, very much inconceivable. And what you see actually, if you see the mitzvahs of the world. In our Mishonim and all that, this is something which is we have to reflect on it and see. Every house is part of a city. A city is part of a state. A state is part of a country. And they all have to comply, so to speak, to the rules of the higher authority. But you don't, once it's established, you don't see any sense of it.
What's that? This is illustrating that.
Now, this bitul is not sensed in the individual entity.
The Makif or the bitul is not sensed.
The bitul to the makif. The effect of the makif.
It's present but not sensed.
When you're driving down the road, and you have to keep the rules of the road, rules of traffic. You have to stop at a red light. Now the red light, you stop at a red light because it's safe to further. If you don't stop, you're going to get in an accident. You don't stop at a red light because this is the law of the city. Certainly not because it's the law of the state. Certainly not because it's the law of the country. Although this is what it's worth. When you build a city, you have to build a little village. You'll have to have permits from the state and from the country, and comply with the rules that they provide for.
Unless you live in Houston.
Yeah, what's in Houston?
No regulations. Seriously. Less property. The property value is much cheaper. But anyway, yeah. The point here is that there's a bitul to the makif. It's present, but it's not sensed.
That's right. It's not bitul to the makif. It's the bitul that the makif represents. The reason that the makif represents bitul is because the makif reaches up to a higher value.
Again, it's the bitul that the makif represents, which reaches up to a higher value. And that's not consciously sensed, but it's very important.
That's right.
Okay.
Not consciously sensed.
If I may, you were giving the mashal of the house, in the city, in the state, in the country, right? And so you may not be aware that as you're driving down the road, so to speak, it's part of this larger country.
That's right.
But once you recognize it, that there's a sense of bitul to that entire structure, because you are conforming with the rules and intent of the established country, state, city, so on and so forth.
Okay,
Yes?
having said that, you have to go a step further.
Okay.
That the bitul that the country represents is the human value for which it was built in the first place.
Right, because of the intent.
Yeah, the intent of the human aspect. It's not even a country.
But as opposed
Once we start
to,
going into the godly sphere, correct, then it is understanding Hashem created the universe with intent. And we are here within his rules and regulations, just like with a lahavdil, a traffic signal.
Human beings live in the world under the godly laws. You cannot escape that.
that's when you mentioned human values. You went sort of out of the national identity to talk about human.
They're all drawn from national identity. And all values are drawn from the source of value.
Right, namely the Creator's mandate. Okay.
Like you always give this illustration. If you build a house on Mars, you will have no restrictions. You will not have a value. You will not be home. Because God did not mean Mars for human habitat. There's no divine spirit there that says, yes, oh, this is a nice place to develop.
It does, right. It does seem like at the micro level, like when the person has his own house and his address, like we said, then the bigger picture becomes
Obscured.
obscured, exactly.
It's obscured and in Nirgash, Behelim, but it's definitely there.
Right. Isn't it quite important that it's not fully obscured? It needs to continue to articulate all the way down to the practical and the minute. What's with it being obscured?
Okay. The Makif is felt by the person, no question about it. And he definitely senses the principle, the effect of the fact that his home is within this neighborhood and this city and this country and so on. And it represents the values of all these different levels. But it's Behelim
Behelim Ma'od?
very much Behelim. When you clean your home, you do not say, we have to have this home clean because it's part of the United States. In respect of the U.S. flag, you have to be clean the same.
No?
You're going to plant the flag.
Well, I'll put
afterwards?
it.
We have conquered this
We
room
have
for
conquered
the
this
United
kitchen
States.
for the United States of America. No, I mean, alternatively, we have said that every step a man takes, his ratzon is at play, and he has a sense
It
of
is
it.
there. That's what it says Behelim. It is definitely there. It permeates. It's definitely there. And therefore, when you build your home, the home is going to be built according to certain rules, and you yourself will appreciate the location where it's built. No question about it. But that becomes obscured. It becomes
The same way our own ratzon is obscured to us, yeah?
Well, that is true, but that needs to be elaborated on. Like I said, the same home on Mars will not conjure up the same kind of a sense of a home.
Totally, which seems to indicate that this Makif is not so much obscured. We have quite a good sense of context of Makif. I'm in a great neighborhood. I'm in the United States.
You have a good sense,
Yeah.
but that sense you're not aware of it.